everyone, Chef Haley here from The Holistic Trick, and I am in my kitchen this morning cooking up some bone broth. Many of the broths you find at the grocery store virtually have 0 calories, there's no protein, there's no anything in them. It's basically salted flavored water. And honestly, bone broth is so easy to make at home. We're going to show you how to do that today. And I actually sourced some bones from the Coastal Foodshed's virtual market off of the What's Good app. And we have 4 pounds of Bogside Acres bones here. We also have 2 onions, a garlic head that's kind of half used, and we have the tops of a celery cut off. We have some bay leaves, and we have some fresh herbs that I just had laying around. You can also use dried herbs. Those work actually just as well. And I also have some apple cider vinegar, which is really important in extracting all of those nutrients from the broth. I like to make a big batch of broth, portion it into some containers, and then freeze it so I can pull it out anytime that I want and use it for anything. To get started on this recipe, we're going to preheat our oven to 400 degrees, and we're actually going to roast the bones and the onions, the garlic, and the celery on a sheet tray lined with a piece of parchment paper. You can add virtually any herb to your bone broth. Rosemary is nice, whatever's in season, whatever you have laying around. You can also add a ton of different vegetables to your bone broth. The only things that you really want to avoid are things like cabbage or broccoli, kale, anything that kind of is a little bit stinky. That will make your broth also have that flavor. So you really want more vegetables that are on the sweeter side to add to your broth. You're going to want to just roughly dice the vegetables. It doesn't have to be pretty or accurate at all. You just want to get them on the sheet tray and ready for roasting. I like to even keep the skin on for my garlic and onions and just kind of chop into the garlic to expose the garlic inside. As long as your onions don't contain any dirt on them, you can also put the skins and the bottoms and every part of the onion right on that sheet tray. Just a touch of olive oil on the vegetables to get them roasting evenly. You're going to want to roast this for about 20 minutes at 400 degrees. You're going to want to add a couple tablespoons of the apple cider vinegar. You want to fill your stock pot with filtered water just until 1 inch before the top of the stock pot to leave some room for your bones and your vegetables to go right in. And I highly recommend using a filtered water source because the broth is so pure and you want to keep it that way. You definitely want really clean water to begin with. I also like to add a good amount of ground black pepper, or if you have whole peppercorns, you can put about a tablespoon right in your broth. If you're into spiciness, you could add a red bird's eye chili pepper. You could add any sort of hot pepper to your broth that you'd like. Bring your broth to a boil on high heat. And then once it's at a boil, you're going to want to turn the heat down to low until it just simmers. It's like this. I recommend starting your bone broth in the afternoon or in the evening and letting it simmer overnight for 12 to 24 hours. No longer than 24 hours, you want to go with it. And in the morning when you wake up, you're going to be left with an absolutely beautiful broth that's going to be ready for cooling and straining. And you're going to want to cool that completely to 40 degrees Fahrenheit before you put a lid on, before you put it in the freezer, or store it for using in the future. I like to use a fine mesh strainer to drain my broth. You could also use some cheesecloth, but I find that this is the easiest way. You'll want to use a food grade plastic or glass container for storing your broth. And that's all there is to it. Now you have a ton of broth to use for anything you'd like. I'm sipping on mine this morning, and I hope you try to make bone broth at home. Don't forget to check out Coastal Foodshed Virtual Market, where you can source all of these local ingredients that I use in this recipe today. Happy cooking!